So a long time ago I created forum posts with attached XML characters for each of the classes in the player's handbook, showing how to set up the effects for each of these classes. There's been a number of requests for this to be extended to include the archetypes found in Xanathar. But rather than create long forum posts, I thought I would create the XML files so that they could be downloaded, but I would also do this video explaining how the effects work. So we've got our Xanathar's Barbarian here, and we've dragged in the Barbarian class 20 times to make him level 20. We haven't given him any other statistics or anything like that, because that doesn't matter. And in the Actions tab here we can see we've already set up a power group for the Path of the Ancestral Guardian. And if we open that up, we see that we have another one here, Vengeful Ancestor. So I'll just show you quickly how I did this. I just simply dragged these in and dropped them, and then just type in the Path of the Ancestral Guardian here. And it will put it into that particular power group. This is useful because the player character can then, or the player can then just click on these and they get an explanation of what each of these things mean, and so it's all on the same page should they need to consult that. So I'm going to pause the video here, and I'm going to add in all the effects for these four specializations, and then we'll come back and have a look at them. We've set up all the effects for the Path of the Ancestral Guardian, so let's have a look at them. The first one is Ancestral Protectors. It's probably the most complicated one, and if we have a look at what it's saying, it's telling us that the first creature that the Barbarian hits gets its attacks hindered, and until the start of its next turn the target has disadvantage on any attack roll that isn't against the Barbarian, and when the target hits a creature other than you with an attack, the creature has resistance to all the damage dealt with by the attack. So this takes a little bit of doing. If we have a look at the effects that we've set up, and we'll just show how this works. That's probably the easiest way. So we've got our combat tracker here, we've got some enemies, and we've got our Barbarian's ally. So let's swing round to the Barbarian's turn. So there are three effects here, and he wants to place two of these effects onto his allies, and the third effect goes on to the enemy. So we're going to first of all select all of our allies as targets, and then we're going to place the protected effect onto those allies, and we're then going to add in the resist all effect to those allies as well. So you can see that the three allies of the Barbarian have got these two effects placed on it. Our Barbarian is then going to select his target, Orc 3 in this case, and he's going to place the third effect onto Orc 3. Now what this effect is doing is using the custom function. So it's looking for a target, and if the target of the attack has the protected tag on it, then the Orc's going to get disadvantage to any attack rolls. So we can see that we've got the protected tag onto the Barbarian's allies, but the Barbarian himself doesn't have such a tag. So that means that the Orc, if it attacks the Barbarian, will do so normally, but if it attacks any of the Barbarian's allies, it will do so with disadvantage. Now the second part of this, the resist all bit, this function here will resist all damage. However, at the moment it's going to resist all damage from any attacks which come in from any of the three Orcs. So what we've got to do is we've got to set this up as a targeted effect, and we do this, or the Dungeon Master would have to do this because the players won't have access to this. The Dungeon Master needs to open up the effects dialog in the combat tracker, find the resist all effect, and then using the targeting reticule, he must drag it onto the target, in this case Orc 3. And he's going to have to do this for all of the Barbarian's allies. And once he's done that, you can see here that this effect is now targeting Orc 3. So what this means is that if Orc 3 should damage any of the Barbarian's allies, then the allies will resist the damage that's dealt from that attack, but only from that Orc. So if we test all of this out now, let's supposing that we come round to Orc 3's turn, and supposing the Orc decides to attack Arani here. So when he rolls his attack, you can see that he does so at a disadvantage, but nevertheless he's still hit. So he's now going to do some damage. And you'll see that Arani partially resisted the damage that was dealt. If any of the other Orcs were to attack, such as this one here, then it doesn't roll with disadvantage and no resistance to the damage is made. Equally, if the target of Xanathar, the Barbarian's protection, attacks the Barbarian, then he too suffers the full attack and the full damage. So that's Ancestral Protectors. We notice that all of the effects have got a duration of 1 round, which is all that it lasts. So let's have a look at Consult the Spirits, which is the next one on the list. Now this is, these are just 2 spells that the Barbarians got access to. They're all Theatre of the Mind spells, and we've got the links to the spells here. And so that's really it. There's no effects that we can set up particularly for these spells, so it's simply, as I say, Theatre of the Mind, and the Barbarian can just use this. One thing that we could do, since he's only able to use this once, is to go into preparation mode and make this once per rest. As you can see, he gets this back on a short or long rest, so we can add that in, and once the Barbarian has used it, he can tick it and it'll be removed. And then if he has a short rest, it'll untick and it'll come back. So that's Consult the Spirits. So let's move on to Spirit Shield. I'll have a look and see what this one says. If the Barbarian is raging and another creature that it can see within 30 feet takes damage, he can use his reaction to reduce that damage by 2d6. So the effect that we've created for this one is damage minus 2d6, fairly straightforward. We've set it to targets, and we've set the expend to on next action, because this will only happen once. So the way that this one would work is, supposing Orc 3 decides to attack Arani, and the Barbarian decides that it's going to use its Spirit Shield power, he's simply going to drag this effect and drop it onto Orc 3. Let's actually get rid of all these other effects for a moment from these 2, just so that they don't interfere. And we'll actually give Arani all our hit points back as well. So the Orc now has this effect on it, and if it now damages Arani, you can see that the 2d6 is rolled and it reduces the damage by the amount that's rolled. So the Orc rolled 12, the 2d6 have come to a total of 6. So 12 minus 6 plus its normal bonus for its strength, and the result 9, and Irani's only taken 9 damage rather than the 15 she would have normally taken. Okay, that's the path of the Ancestral Guardian. I'm going to pause the video here and I'll set up the effects for the path of the Storm Herald archetype. Right, that's us all set up. So the first one we'll have a look at is the Storm Aura, which is the first on the list. And this essentially tells us that depending on the environment that your various effects will happen depending if it's a desert, sea or tundra. So the first thing that we actually did in this one, because you can see here if a saving throw is required, the difficulty class is equal to your 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your constitution modifier. So in the meta data group for the path to Storm Herald, we've clicked on there and we've set the ability to con. And that means that any effect in here which requires a saving throw of some kind will feed off the Barbarian's Constitution ability modifier. So in the case of the Storm Aura, we've set up all the effects here now. I haven't read this in great detail as to whether or not you get a choice of this at all times, but at any rate, here are all the effects. So the first one in the desert, it's simple enough. Anybody in the aura takes 2 fire damage, so we just have a damage of 2 fire. This will increase depending on the level of the Barbarian. I've just left it at 2, but technically since this guy's level 20, it should be 6. If it's in the sea, then the Barbarian forces the creature to make a saving throw. So here's our save, a dexterity saving throw. We've just typed in we've selected the dexterity from here. We've left this at group DC because we've already set that in the metadata. So the difficulty class is correct, and if the creature fails the saving throw, then it takes 1d6 lightning damage, and half if it succeeds, which is the H here, and this is the lightning damage. So we just simply use that if we just simply select the target, force the saving throw, and if it fails, apply the damage. In Tundra, when the effect is activated, each creature gets 2 temporary hit points. So here we have a heal, 2 temporary hit points. So the Barbarian would select targets or just drag the hit points onto an ally, and you can see we've got 2 temporary hit points here. And again, this changes depending on level, so this would need to be manually added in. So that's the Storm Aura. The next one we will need to look at is Storm Soul. And this again is another one which is dependent on the environment in which the Barbarian finds himself. And in each case, the main thing is that the Barbarian gets resistance to a certain type of damage. So it's pretty simple. We just have resist fire, resist lightning, or resist cold, depending on what the environment is. And effectively, that is it. The only thing we haven't done here correctly is that we haven't given this a duration, and since this only applies during the Barbarian's rage, then we should change this to a minute in each case, since that's how long the rage should last. So that is Storm Soul. We can now have a look at Shielding Storm. And essentially what that says is that at 10th level, each creature of your choice has damage resistance that you gain from the Storm Soul feature. So the effects that we've set up here are exactly the same as the previous one, really, except that we've set the targets, the target of the effect to targets rather than self. And this time we actually put in the duration of 1 minute, and so that's it. We just simply select a target or drag the appropriate resistance onto the ally. And the final one in this group is a Raging Storm. This one has a lot of different variety to it, and again it depends on the environment. But if we're in a desert, we force the creature to make a dexterity saving throw, so we've set this up here. Again, we've used the group DC since we set it up that way. And in a failed save, the creature takes fire damage equal to half your Barbarian's level. Now this one is a little bit more complex. We've set this up as a damaging effect. We haven't used any dice because we don't need to, and we have changed the statistic here to Barbarian. Now, this is important because it says the Barbarian's level and not the character's level. So if this was a multi-class character, say with 5 levels of a Barbarian and 5 of Fighter, then it would only be half of the Barbarian part. So they wouldn't be getting half of 10, we'd be getting half of 5. So we've simulated this by changing the stat bonus here to Barbarian. Since this is a level 20 Barbarian, that would give a bonus of 20. And we have used the bonus here to remove half the level by just adding in -10. So if you have a Barbarian level 2, then you would put a -1 in there effectively. So that you'll have to calculate this manually and do it this way. And then obviously we need to put in the damage type as well. For the C1, straightforward enough. The creature must make a strength saving throw, so we've got the strength save in here, and if it fails, the creature's knocked prone. So we've got the prone effect here set to targets. So the Barbarian is just simply going to select the target and add this effect to the target, or drag it and drop it on the target. And the final one is another strength saving throw, so we can just use the same one as we have already there. And if it fails, the speed is reduced to 0. So there's no effect that we can create to actually reduce a creature's speed to 0. So all we've done here is created an effect which just is telling us that the creature's speed is reduced to 0. So we would just drag that onto the creature. It'll show that on the combat tracker as a reminder that the creature won't be able to move. So that's it for the Path of the Storm Herald. So I'll pause the video again and set up the effects for the last archetype. Okay, we've set up all the effects now for the Path of the Zealot, and the first one we're looking at is Divine Fury. And this indicates that the first creature you hit on each of your turns with a weapon attack takes extra damage equal to 1d6 plus half your Barbarian level, and the damage can be either necrotic or radiant. So we've actually set this up 2 different ways because there are 2 different ways that we can do it. The first method is we've used a damaging effect. And as you saw in previously, we've added in a d6. We've made the statistic here Barbarian, so that would be in this case a bonus of 20 because this is a level 20 Barbarian, and then we've reduced that bonus by -10 to simulate the half level. And we've typed in necrotic in this particular case. So just to use this effect, then we just simply drag it and drop it on a target, and that's how you would do that effect. The second method that we've used is to use a damage effect here, and using the damage, this is targeted to self and set to expend on next action, and we've simply manually calculated the +10 here, and we've given it the radiant damage type. So in this case, how we would work this would be to apply the effect to the Barbarian before he makes a damage attack, and if he makes a damage attack, then this will be added on to whatever damage he does normally. We haven't given him any weapons, so I can't demonstrate it, but that will just add in the damage onto the next attack. So you've got a choice there of whichever you would like to use. Now, Warrior of the Gods, this is a simple theatre of the mind thing. There's no effects that we can set up for that would be of any use to us. Fanatical focus. Again, this is just a theatre of the mind thing, but you can use this ability only once per rage. So we've set this up. We've gone into the preparation mode and we've set this up as one use once, which is not strictly correct because it's once per rage, but it's we can't really we can't. There isn't a way that we can set this up to work where it comes back once there is rage. So you can do this if you like, or you can just ignore it. But if the Barbarian uses his fanatical focus, it will disappear as a reminder that he can't use it again. And then after his rage finishes, he can untick this and put it back in. But you'd have to remember to do that, so it may not be worthwhile. Zealous Presence. This one says a bonus action, you unleash a cry-infused divine energy, and up to 10 creatures of your choice within 60 feet gain advantage on attack and saving throws into the start of your next turn. Fairly straightforward. So here's the effects for that, just advantage attack, advantage save. So that simply gets placed on any characters that should get that, and Arani here will now get advantage to all our saving throws, as will Deneric. We've set this to 1 round, and we've also set it to targets, so this effect will be removed when it comes back around to the Barbarian's turn quite correctly. And we've also set this one up because it says you can't use this again until you finish a short or long rest. Or, sorry, until you finish a long rest. So we've set this up in preparation mode, and in fact we should have that at daily. So once the Barbarian has used that, tick it off, it disappears, and then if they should take a long rest, it'll come back. So that's that one, and the only one left then is Rage Beyond Death. And again, this is purely a theatre of the mind one. There's no effects that we can set up which would help us to work this one any better. Okay, that's it. That covers all of the new archetypes found in Xanathar's guide. As I say, the forum post here will have the XML for this particular Barbarian so that you can see all the effects, and you can therefore watch the video, see how the effects work and how they were created, and then you'll also have the XML file to be able to use to create your own character. Now, obviously this won't work, none of these links will work if you don't have Xanathar's guide, so obviously that will be an essential. It'll be essential to have that module open in order to see all the text. Okay, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one in due course. Cheers for now.